You know, you get an earwig in your head and you like can't get it out, so you keep hearing the song. And you know, I've had that song in my head for a while now because grace is a word that we hear a lot of. I honestly think that we've heard it more in the last 3 years than I've heard it my entire life. You know, pandemic comes around and it's like, we need to really give these kids grace. We don't know what resources they have at home, so we have to give them that grace. We need to give teachers grace. What they are shouldering, what they are trying to accomplish is insane. We need to give our HR departments grace because they can't find enough subs and they are looking under every rock. So we heard about grace a lot, but I'm not sure if I saw it as much as I heard about it. And then I also think about like the different definitions of grace, because the former English teacher in me is like, okay, grace can be a noun or a verb. And so the noun is like a single act of kindness or courtesy, and then the verb is actually to confer dignity or honor on someone. So then I really got confused. And so I started thinking more and more about grace and what does that mean? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? And so for me, I didn't really understand the concept of grace outside of a religious setting until I became a dad. You might have seen, my picture has my 4 kids in there. If you have been around me at all the past few days, you've heard about them, probably way more than you would like. But the truth of the matter is I have 4 incredibly resilient, phenomenal, amazing, unique, tiny humans that I get to be their dad. We adopted our gingers, actually, 9 years ago this very day. Oh. So shout out to yesterday's Gotcha Day. I had to send a Gotcha Day text and told them I'd make it up to them when I get back. But so we've had them for 9 years, and we adopted them out of foster care when they were 2.5 and 4. They'd been in the system for 2.5 years, but living with their paternal grandparents. Really wonderful setting, wonderful couple. They're still in our lives. They're actually grandparents to all 4 of our kids now. And then our second set, we call them our gingers or our first, and our brownies. Our brownies, we adopted about 5.5 years ago, but their story was very different. They were in the system for 5.5 years, 11 different homes, and then came to us following an adoption disruption, which is when a family decides for whatever reason, no judgment whatsoever, whatever reason, it's not gonna work out for them. And so we had our family and we felt full, but we were also introduced to probably the single most powerful hyphenate I've ever encountered in my life: trauma-informed. You see, on paper, when you include the adults and the children of my family, on paper, we're an acronym smorgasbord. We've got ADHD, we've got ADD, which is still ADHD inattentive type. We've got SPD, sensory processing disorder, ASD, autism spectrum disorder, ODD, oppositional defiance disorder, GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, and then the icing on the cakes, PTSD-CT, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, complex trauma that is developed over a sustained period of time. So educators, you've seen 504s, you've seen IEPs, you can envision some of the challenges that our kiddos face and some of the barriers that are placed in front of them through no fault of their own. And so thinking through that situation, I had to find grace. I had to see what is gonna help me meet the needs of these kiddos, meet these kids right in front of me. Because what trauma-informed care teaches us is it teaches us the science behind behavior, right? Those are the skills that help us not take it personally when things are going south. And so it teaches us that the prefrontal cortex, the front of your brain, is what you want to drive the bus. That's your reason center. Your limbic system's there in the middle. That's your emotional center of your brain. It's a deeper recess. And then all the way in the deep recesses of our brain, and that brainstem, is our survival instinct, that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. Well, when we look at behavior through the way the brain processes information, we understand that kiddos that have been through a rough situation, especially sustained, have existed in their emotional state and survival state almost nonstop their entire life. So those muscles are super jacked, whereas the muscle of regulation hasn't been worked out the way it needs to be. What trauma-informed care teaches us is that can change. We can reprogram brains. We can get brains to strengthen the prefrontal cortex. It's like the bodybuilder who only works up the upper body, and the legs are super tiny little chicken legs, and you see them and you're like, dude, what about leg day? Well, guess what? We've all kind of been skipping leg day for a few years. We had a little thing called a pandemic that forced every single person to exist more in our emotional state and survival state than we had been doing for years. Fuses got shorter. Tempers got louder and bigger. Emotions got bigger. Disconnection spread throughout the whole system. But I define grace as being able to notice that our common humanity connects us all and gives us permission to bring that common humanity to the forefront of a person's worth. And that's the first thing we see. That's the first thing we acknowledge. And so when I was thinking about, okay, what does this look like in the classroom? This looks like stopping and recognizing that humanity hides. It hides behind a thrown chair. It hides behind a flipped desk. It hides behind cuss words. It hides behind insults. It hides behind failing grades, chronic absenteeism, disengagement. But that humanity is there. It's just hiding, and our kids want us to see it, and they need us to see it. So German writer Johann Goethe said, treat people as they ought to be, and you help them become who they are capable of being. Treat people as they ought to be, and you help them become what they are capable of being. Can you imagine a school where every single child has dignity and honor conferred upon them, the verb of grace? Can you imagine a society? I can. I once was lost, but now am found.